I feel like it's par for the course. If Isla's crying gets picked up a little bit, it's just it just really highlights that we've been doing this for 10 years and this
Yeah.
long.
It's 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 raw, it's your reality, right?
Yeah. I wonder what 10 years ago Mac would think about the fact that 10 years in the future, he would still have a company, which would be great, but he would also have a brand newborn baby.
Yeah.
I don't know what's harder, keeping the baby alive or the company alive.
Well, you've had more experience with one than the other, I guess.
I know. Well, it is interesting, before we hit record on this, I was just thinking you and I haven't really had a proper catch up in a hot second anyway, just with the baby to even really think about the 10-year. I mean, all this stuff has come together so quickly and trying to like celebrate it that you and I haven't even really had a chance to talk too much about what it means to be 10 years old. I mean, it's kind
Yeah.
of crazy if you think about it, really. I mean, 10 years of anything is a long time, let alone hanging out with me for that long.
Thank God it's not just you anymore, right? No.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
mean, I don't know. I've never worked anywhere longer than this, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
a weird thing to
Same.
think about.
Same.
I mean, not even by a long shot. I mean, double the amount of time as my other longest employer.
I know that's kind of crazy. I wouldn't even say, what I think is funny is when you and I started this, I don't think either one of us had an inkling of how grandiose it could be. Like, I don't think we weren't even talking about 10 years. I just remember from the early days, just even how uncertain we were about the first year of it.
Yeah.
Truthfully, if we're being honest about it, like even when we left the old agency, I don't even know. We were debating on whether we even wanted to leave, right? There was a real push and pull on whether we wanted to do that just because, things were going pretty well. The agency was kind of at its height. You and I had a lot of creative control. So I remember it wasn't an easy decision when we started Dash back in 2015.
No, you definitely kind of led the charge on that. But I think you know, we had been moonlighting. I mean, at
Yeah.
this point, 10 years. If someone from the old job hears this, sorry, right?
Yeah, right.
But we had been working together after hours on projects. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know if people know the origin story as far as getting like an opportunity to do one really big project that was so big that we had to quit or decline. And I do remember, you know, you being pretty ready to quit to take it and me being a lot more nervous about it because it was like, okay, great, decent payout right now, but what about after that, you know?
Yeah.
And at least from my point of view, I think that,
Yeah. Well, what's the story? Tell the story. I mean, some folks might not even know it.
well, again, without getting into specifics of like who it was, you and I both have a colleague that had kind of entered the motion design space before we did, and they were working at a pretty well-known place, and they had come to us for small gigs off and on for a couple years, even while we were working at the agency where we met. And
Uh-huh.
then they kind of dropped a bigger, I think it was like a 3-month long, 3 or 4 month long contract on our lap and said, y'all should bid for this.
Yeah.
Caveat, it's going to take like 40-hour weeks. You'll have to quit your job. But I have a pretty good wink, wink idea that you'll get it. Right. We're like, oh, well, hell, I mean, I guess we'll do it. And you were pretty gung ho about it, and I was a lot more skeptical, not of the project, but of like the future.
Like once we had won, you mean once we had won it and
Yeah,
like whether
once the
what do we
decision
say?
was
Yeah.
made, yeah, we said, yeah, we'll do it, and you were like, okay, are you ready to quit? And I was like, I don't know, maybe I could do it part time, and you could do it full time, and you basically, and again, we're still friends, so I'm not mad. Said, no, you either quit or I ask someone else.
That's right. I
And
did
I
say
don't even
that.
know. I've always been curious if you had someone else in mind, like who was going to be the Cory
Oh,
if it wasn't the
no.
Cory. But I get,
Nobody. I would have done it by myself and
yeah.
been miserable.
And honestly, that's kind of what it took. I was like, you know what? Well, I had a conversation with my parents. You mentioned this recently in your post about the 10 years
I did. I talked to
on
my parents as
social.
well.
Yeah, well, of course we're in our 30s, 20s, 30s, right?
I
Early
know. I was
younger. So
28, dude. 28 years old. I was a
yeah, I guess
baby.
that would have put me 32.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, I graduated college and then did nothing for a long time, so don't feel bad about that. I'm a late bloomer, as they say.
I
Uh,
graduated college and did nothing.
yeah,
That's so funny.
but yeah, I talked to them and they were like supportive. I guess for me, like my whole world was this agency we worked at, and it was hard to see that it was just a job, frankly. And once they were supportive and you were like, "Look, this is if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We have a resume. We go find something else." It's like, "Yes, great point. It'll be fine." So we quit together. I remember you and I went to our boss's office at the same time, and they knew exactly what was coming.
I know that was pretty funny how it all unfolded. It's interesting because I feel like you and I are both like pretty confident individuals now and what we're doing in our craft. But I do remember being nervous about that,
Mhm.
just the unknown of it. Um, you know, I know you said I was like way more confident in that decision moving forward, which I think I was between the two of us, but even then I was still unsure. When I think back to that first year, I do really remember us being pretty conservative on spending any money. Like, I think when
Mhm.
we went into it, we were like, we saw how fragile it could all be. Like, so I think you and I were both really nervous about like, neither one of us came from a ton. So getting that job at the previous agency, making good money, it was like, there was nervousness in giving that
Oh,
up.
yeah.
And so I think you and I both recognized that when we started. And so we worked out of the apartment for the first
At
year, basically.
at least, if not a little more than the first year. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was, to your point, the first job where we had salary, healthcare, all the benefits. So to say no, to leave that when it was actually not a bad gig, I think you and I both enjoyed working there, was tough. But I think we basically took half of that gig and put it in the
Mhm.
business. The other half paid our rent and so on and so forth. And yeah, I don't know. No regrets looking back on it. I mean, the first year was stressful, but also like in a way we didn't know what we didn't know, so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. We
You
did a
know,
lot of naps.
there were a lot
We
of
we
naps.
remember like we did the midday nap. Like we literally would go
Yeah,
eat lunch together. We come back and be like, "All right, I'll go take a nap. You go take a nap. We'll hop back online here
yeah.
in a bit."
Don't do that much anymore, or
No.
at least I don't tell you
Wait a
about
minute.
it.
Hold on. Yeah.
Yeah, when I think back to the first year, I think about the naps, I think about working out of the apartment, but it kind of felt like the stakes were low in a sense
Yeah.
because it was basically just you and me freelancing, really. I
Yeah.
mean, we
That's
had
really
big,
what it was. Yeah.
we did incorporate.
Sure.
And honestly, one of the things that I look back on and think that I'm proud of ourselves for doing was taking it pretty seriously once we incorporated.
Oh,
I
you mean like
mean,
doing like an operations agreement and stuff like
yep,
that?
we got
Yeah.
the prenup, we got
You
to
got the
like
prenup.
figure out,
Well, because
you
I
know,
do you remember you and I, we reached out to all these other design
mentors.
pairs, yeah,
Yeah.
that we knew who had started companies with other people that had these awful falling outs. Like, I just remember going around, you and I were having lunches and coffees and catching up, and we're just like, "What went wrong?" And all these people were like, "Oh, make sure you get your operations agreement." So, honestly, credit some of those other
I
relationships for falling
know.
apart that set us up for success.
Well, and I don't know how many people who know who Dash is know that you and I were animators, and not at all business oriented people. And
Oh, yeah.
so, we to your point, needed some mentorship on the operational side of things. And it was a real eye opener. One of the notes I took before this conversation was like learning how many small business partnerships ruin friendships.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And, I had been friends with you for going on 4 or 5 years
Mhm.
before we started the company.
I know.
And the last thing I wanted to do was screw that up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Because of
know.
money or wanting different things out of the whatever. So yeah, I definitely think we made plenty of mistakes in the early years, but one thing that was not a mistake was getting the prenup, getting the operations agreement, you know, deciding what's going to happen if one of us wants to leave or
Yeah,
dissolve. We've already
right.
got that figured out. Doesn't matter how much animosity there is. Another thing we did I thought was really smart was like payroll. I know
Oh,
that sounds
sure.
really, really boring, but like, and again, I don't even know how much I've talked to you about this, but Dash is technically the second company I've started. The first one, we just barely made any money and we just paid each
Wait
other out of our checking
wait a
account.
minute, wait a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
What was the first one?
Uh, we were doing like design and video and web work, but again,
Oh,
very light touch.
I
It
do
was
remember
mostly just
this. I do remember this now.
really terrible looking websites, and
What was
it
the
was
name of the company?
contagious. Although don't know if I should mention that because my friends are going to be listening to this, who I did that with. But look, they wouldn't disagree. I mean,
No,
we
I'm
all
sure
do
they
different things now. We were in college, like we barely had our stuff together, right? So, long story short, what I mean by that is like it was it wasn't a very serious endeavor, and so we took this a lot more seriously, and we were paying ourselves paychecks with taxes taken out, all these
Sure.
adult
Yeah.
things, which
I
I
know.
think was smart.
Well, it was kind of like, you know how the people say like, you know, if you project positivity, positivity will fall on you. It's like if we project professionalism, that we will be professional, even though we were still kind of figuring it out.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't want to belittle our knowledge in the early days. We were really good at animation and design, and I think we were both pretty affable people, and we had a good rapport of initial relationships, and that was all great. I mean, you know, so we weren't coming into it not knowing anything, but we did not fully understand the business side design. I swear, I remember, I don't know why I remember this visually, but I remember a client asking us if we could send over an SOW by end of day, and I didn't even know what a SOW was. And I was like, oh, statement of work. What is a statement of work?
Yeah. Oh,
Do you remember those early estimates we put together? I like had to look one up the other day just because it was like literally a page with our logo and like a line item for like the cost. Like,
animation, $1,000. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it was so dumb. I can't believe anyone hired us. It was so ridiculous.
Yeah. I do think that some of the hard, I mean, you know, making the animations was easy in the early
Yeah.
days. It was communicating with clients that was tricky. It was communicating with each other that was tricky. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we're still friends, obviously, so it wasn't that bad. But
No.
I know the the, the days of working all day on something just to have you come over and say it didn't look good, and vice versa. I'm not just throwing that on you. It went both
Sure.
ways, right? Or, uh, you
Yeah, you're
know,
right. Because that was hard because we had to critique each other.
yeah,
And in the early days, we were doing like what, 4 or 5 projects maybe at a time. So each of us were juggling a couple. You're pressed on timelines. We both understood that we needed feedback, yet we were so disappointed when the other person would give it to us, you know?
yeah.
That's so funny. What do you, I feel like we're airing dirty laundry. What was the stuff? What were you, you know, most upset with me about in the early days? What
Oh no! Oh
yeah,
no!
what really got under your skin in the early days?
Gosh, you. Oh, all right, here we are. I think you had a habit of micromanaging communications a little bit. I think,
Yeah, I
which would bug
did.
me. You know, if I had an email that I was in charge of a particular project and was going to send to a client, you would really want it to be written in a different way.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
you know, not even saying you were right or wrong, but I think it was a bit more subjective than perhaps you
I think
thought
you're
it
right.
was.
I think you're right. You know, I remember that,
Yeah.
because I remember being like, "Why is Cory so damn verbose
Yeah.
on, the way he writes?" But what's amazing, though, is, like, that's what we were arguing about. Like,
Oh, yeah.
of all the things we could have been arguing about, it was like, we would spend way too much time critiquing emails on how we're gonna send that back to the client.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so, you know, I mean, if that's the biggest issue, I think we're pretty lucky. It was certainly me, like, rolling my eyes when you left the room because I had to rewrite an email that was perfectly fine before, right? But, like, you know, small potatoes. So,
I
you know,
know, I know.
gosh, I mean, I don't know if there's any, like,
Or maybe the better question is like, what are some of the things we look back on from that first year and kind of roll our eyes at or like think back on?
well, since I threw you under the bus, you're more than welcome to throw me under the bus. My favorite, me making a bad choice, was
What?
a client asking us for pretty minimal feedback, and I didn't
Sit-
agree with it. You know, I didn't agree with it, so I just said, "Oh, you know, I think we'd rather not do that one." Which, like, what in the world was I thinking? What in the
like
world?
not even like, well, let's talk through it or anything. It's like we're just not going to do
I was like,
that.
no, you know, like,
Absolutely
and then
not.
they, of
It's a
course,
terrible design
emailed us
choice.
back, like, pretty upset, which justified. Like, who do you think you are? We're paying you. You're going to make this change. Like, what are you talking about? I was like, oh shit. And so yeah, you know.
Do you know what story I thought you were going to tell for a second?
Oh, please go on.
Was when you lost that check.
No, please.
That was our first year. So like that's excusable. But I mean, look, it's not throwing you under the bus. It's a funny story. I mean, we
Oh
just
yeah,
trying to
go
figure it out.
on, go on.
Go on. Well, we worked on a really cool project, really cool client.
One
And I
of our
think
biggest, coolest projects.
to date, like for sure, it was easily the biggest paycheck I think we had gotten for one single video in the first year. And they sent it to us. And Cory I think you were literally walking to the bank to deposit it, weren't you?
Yes. which is only 4 blocks away from here, by the way. Like,
It's so ridiculous.
it's not like I had to even drive anywhere or anything. It was just a walk. And when I got to the bank, the check was gone.
They had to have been like, these fucking amateurs.
Yeah.
Because we had to write them and be like, hey, could you send us a new check? Which of course took like 100 days or something
Yeah,
dumb
yeah,
to
yeah.
get to us. I mean, it took forever.
Forgot about
But
that.
well, it's
That's
all
a
right. It's all right. That same year, I think I've told this story before, but like, I remember I was trying to write out a response to a client who was asking us essentially what something was going to cost. And I remember there was kind of three different directions we could take it. So I, in the email, draft, I wrote like an option for one, an option for two, an option for three. And we went to lunch. And I remember getting back and the client had just responded with a question mark. And I realized that I had submitted all three responses. So like every possible option that we could charge for this project and the three different takes that are like, oh, we're going to charge a lot or we'll be amenable or we'll just do it for free, basically. I think I sent all of them. I had to apologize and be like, look, sorry, I was I just was honest. I was like, I was drafting up
yeah.
multiple decisions,
I was
but
trying to tell you that I was gonna charge you too much. I didn't know how to do that.
oh yeah. I do
Yeah.
remember first few years definitely had a lot more late nights. To me, it felt very akin to freelancing because like we didn't I don't think we had the structure like we do. I mean, I do remember us like generally starting the day about the same time so we could talk about stuff, but
Yeah, but it wasn't like 9 to 6. It wasn't like a
no.
yeah. Because we were coming out of that, and I think we wanted a little bit more of our own freedom time-wise too,
Yeah, that's true.
and we had that flexibility, and honestly, one of the things I still appreciate about now is that we're pretty flexible with our time. I mean, we do
Mhm.
work a 9 to 6 East Coast day, but, like, we take off time when we need to, if we need to pop out for appointments, half days,
Yeah.
etcetera, like, that hasn't changed too much.
Uh-uh.
It's just now that there are other people, if we are gonna do any of that flexible time stuff, we've gotta make sure that everyone else knows what they're doing and has their
Yeah.
assignments and everything buttoned up from
I think
that,
it's also like
you
just a
know.
priority for us over the
Yeah,
years has just been like time. Because
yeah,
I do think our industry, unfortunately, is a bit nefarious for abusing the creator's time, and having been animators ourselves and gone through that, we knew just how terrible that is. And so trying to give ourselves a little bit consistency. Do you remember some of the other names we talked about calling Dash before we?
Neighbors was my
Yeah,
favorite, and
I like
I still
neighbors.
like it, I still like it. I mean, I didn't wanna bring up the name thing because it's sensitive, but, like, it
Mm.
drives me crazy how many people think that we're DoorDash, um, up the wall. I mean,
Sure.
we used to have the street front office, and
That's
and
right.
I would hear people walk by and look at the sign and go like, "Oh, I didn't know there was a
They have a
DoorDash
DoorDash
office."
here.
Yeah.
I know. I do remember, like, I was like, maybe I should reach out to DoorDash. Maybe they're infringing on us. I think they actually technically started, like, not even joking, like 2 weeks before we did.
Yeah,
They're incorporated.
yeah, it wasn't like anyone knew about DoorDash when we started Dash, but I think it was like the same year, yeah.
I remember that you and I had kicked around. Uh, oh, and for the record, we ended up not doing Neighbors because at the time, I think there was a Minneapolis
There was
uh,
another motion
agency.
design
Yeah.
studio, and honestly, if y'all
I don't
know
even know if
us or
they're
are
still
listening, I
yeah.
don't either, yeah, but what's funny now is that IV Studio has turned into Hey Neighbor,
Oh, that's right. That's right.
which
Yeah.
is funny, and I'm, like, kinda mad about it. They don't know that. I'm salty about it. Sorry, guys, I love you. But, like, it's like, dang, I just always really liked that name, and we didn't do it just because we didn't wanna step on any toes, and I'm like, "Man, they didn't care about that. They stepped on some toes," right?
That's fine. Dash is great.
Oh, yeah,
I
I mean, at this
I
point, I
I
love
love
it.
the name. I know. We went back and forth on like 100 names. Honestly, I feel like the reason we ended up landing on Dash was a testament to our friend Andrew, who was like, there's the day you're born, the day you die. The dash is what happens in between. I was like, oh, that sounds badass.
It's
Maybe we
pretty
should go with it.
it's pretty brutal. It's kinda heavy.
It
Yeah.
is kind of heavy. Anyway, make
Ever
the most of your life. Work with Dash.
Yeah, we're literally everything that happens between birth and death. That's us. Yeah.
Look, we're all going to die anyway. Might as well have fun and work with
Yeah.
Dash.
No,
That's funny.
yeah, I like obviously I've grown to love the name, but it
Of
was
course.
a point of we had a very full whiteboard in the early days.
I thinking back, we were joking around about some of like the mistakes or whatever lapses that we did in the early days. Is there anything that you feel like well, I guess you talked about like us going about organization in a proper way. That's something to be proud of because we were pretty organized. I
Yeah.
don't know. Anything else stick out to you in those like early days, the first 5 years? Something you're being proud of?
Yeah, I think Well, I mean, we made it that long and this long,
Yeah, that's true.
which is rare. I think, I mean,
Yeah,
neither one of us, and well, I don't want to speak for you, but I don't think either one of us entered our career phase of life with the idea of being an entrepreneur.
no, definitely
I
not.
a lot of my dad worked for a family company.
Uh-huh.
My uncle was an entrepreneur, but so it's run in my family, but honestly, it wasn't really on my radar. I was more the like, let's do the studio grind and kind of move up through the ranks at like a studio or an
I
agency.
wanted to work at a cool place.
Yeah.
I remember I had some, I think I'd reached out to like Giant Ant and like Buck and stuff and didn't hear much back. And like, I knew I was looking for a change. And truthfully, I don't think I ever thought about entrepreneurship until like literally we started talking about it and was like, oh,
Same.
maybe this could be a thing, which honestly may have been a blessing in disguise because it like, we went into it with the lens of truthfully went to the lens of just making cool stuff and hanging out and having more time. I don't
Yeah.
think either one of us were like, "Oh, this is going to be a path to
Yeah.
financial success."
No, yeah. Or I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah. It
Yeah,
wasn't
right.
a,
It was like two
no.
animators. How would two animators run a company? As
I
basically
think
what we
the
were thinking.
naivety that you're describing made it more fun and made it less scary because we didn't know it was
Yeah.
scary.
Well,
you
we
know?
just didn't know how much. We just had no idea what was coming. We had no idea all the different things that we'd be
Yeah.
getting into, or how much work really goes into running a company. Especially just all the auxiliary stuff. We started as animators, but then as you grow a company, there's just so many other things that you just have to take on from like payroll, operations,
HR.
HR.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean all this stuff. It's just I think to your point that
Naivete.
naivete really helped us out in that front for sure, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, something I'm proud of in the first 5 years and continuing since then is that we grew the team, right? That it became not just you and me. We brought in interns who
Yes.
turned into staff, turned into more
Yeah.
staff. And at first they were friends pulling in from our old agency, but then they
Yeah.
were strangers, right?
I know.
Started with people we knew and
Mhm.
it grew to people we didn't. And I'm proud of that. And it also came with it sort of having to let go of at least my own ego a little bit. I mean, it used to be when we were animators, at least when I was an animator, it was like, I want to make cool stuff.
Mhm.
I want to do it. I want to be the person making these things. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And there wasn't really a flipped switch, but at some point that changed into I want to work with the people who are making
Mhm.
these cool things. I want to hire them. I want to freelance with them. I want to collaborate. I want Dash to make cool stuff. And that was a shift for me, I think, over the last 10 years was that ego. Maybe I still have an ego about the company. I mean, I think I should to some degree, but not about like what I'm producing anymore.
I remember when we got kind of busy and like, I don't know, maybe it was year 3 or 4. It really required because up until then, I think you and I would like literally ping pong back and forth on who was managing the project.
Hmm.
Like you would manage and creative direct, or I would manage and creative direct. But I do remember we got to a point where we started getting busy enough that required a dedicated role, and I felt that feeling maybe earlier than you did because
You took
I
on
had to
that
pit
role.
I had
Yeah.
this pivot to the BEP, and it was like a weird place for someone who's, still to this day, I'd think of myself as designer, which isn't really true. I'm definitely more
Well,
entrepreneur, but it was hard to move to that.
the funny part about that is that you're the only one of the two of us who actually went to design school and has any formal training.
Oh, yeah, that's
You know,
right.
I'm the creative director, but Mac's the one who actually like learned how to be a creative director.
Yeah, but if anything said, I think our industry is so defined by the work put into your career. I mean, yes, I was formally trained, and that does help. But I think when you talk about just the number of projects that we've worked on over the years and what we've created, I mean, that's your grad school for design,
No, yeah.
basically, right?
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, moving away from the actual creation ourselves and to working with a team for creators is definitely was definitely hard in the early days. I remember when we first made that transition, but honestly, I don't think anything of it now that we've been doing it for so long.
Same. Do you feel
Yeah,
like there's anything now that is the same as it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago?
ooh, that's a good question. Yes, I do. I still feel like when we started the company, we had, I think, a very clear vision that we wanted it to be people focused. Like, it just taking, for us, having time, taking care of ourselves, but even as we started to grow a team, building something that was, like, tailored towards the creative, that was something we wanted to do. I still feel really proud that we are kind of a people first agency. I think
Mhm.
about just how much stuff we do for the community, how much we enjoy doing that stuff, how much we enjoy working with others and collaborating with others. I still feel like that's a really big key. Um, I still feel like while maybe you and I are more of a realist about our agency than we were when we first started. I think when we first began, creative dreamers, right? We saw coolest work only, just the most badass stuff that, perfection was for the designer. But I think, moving things forward was for the entrepreneur. And I think we've kind of found a good balance. But at the core, I still feel like we're, you know, people first agency. I still feel like that's really important to us.
Yeah. Well, I think, and something this ties into another point that I'm proud of or wanted to at least talk about a little bit, which is the fact that we started this studio in our home state, your
Mm,
hometown.
uh-huh.
We're only an hour and a half from my hometown, and how unusual that was 10 years ago. You know what
Oh,
I mean?
sure. Yeah.
To
Yeah.
do,
Pre-pandemic.
to try to be, well, yeah, certainly pre-pandemic, but sort of like starting a design agency in the South, right, in a smaller market.
Mhm.
I mean, at the time, it feels like you were in New York or Chicago or LA, and that's like where you had to be. And I know that there were exceptions, and I'm certainly not going to pretend like we were the first. I mean,
Mhm.
I think was it MK12, Kansas City, Dear
Oh, yeah.
Legends,
Yeah, yeah.
even Identity Digital. Now, Hey Neighbors was a few years before us, Nashville, right? So it was happening, but I feel like we had a choice to make. Do we start this here in Raleigh, in North Carolina, or do we go where the big dogs are? And I remember
Ho, ho.
connecting back to the people first mentality is like we went to Blend, we went to F5, we went
Oh,
to
yeah.
these bigger markets to meet these people, and I think that actually in a weird way, like at least it gave me the confidence to know that we could do this here. And that doesn't mean we're totally disconnected from these bigger markets. We can still freelance with these people. We can still communicate with them. We can
Mhm.
get on an airplane and go out to these places and now it's so much more common to work remotely and be
Sure.
anywhere,
Yeah.
but back
Right.
then it just didn't feel that way. And so I don't know. I think that those early days, those early conferences that inspired us to do the bash, obviously, but also just
Mhm.
inspired us to do the studio are why I like paying it back and trying to be people first, as it were, right?
I remember some of those. Truthfully, I still think in the early days of us going to some of those bigger conferences, it helped us that we were from the South and maybe had a little bit of an accent. I know I definitely leaned into it when we would
Hmm.
travel. Be like, "Hey, y'all, Mac here from Dash down in North Carolina. So happy to be
Yeah.
here." But lean into it because it was a kind of a differentiator. Because to your point, it wasn't as common, I think, as it is now, which is interesting.
Y'all have computers down there?
Y'all got computers down there?
Wow.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I am still amazed that we've been able to start this in Raleigh, not because of the way Raleigh is now, but the way it was. It just didn't. I mean, it was coming along, and there was great design talent around. College of Design, NC State was phenomenal, but it always felt like people were kind of leaving. Didn't feel like there was the core design group that was like sticking around. But I feel like Raleigh, as it's grown, so is the design scene, and it's been phenomenal now. Not just us here, but a plethora of other creatives and freelancers around has been really cool to see.
Totally.
What do you think's been the biggest surprise for you in moving into like entrepreneurship and running Dash? Kind of being a creator into now, more management, more entrepreneurial stuff. What has been the biggest surprise you think?
Now, Mac, you asked me the one question I didn't write down a little note
Mm,
for.
good. Got to get that authentic answer.
I know, I know. I mean, I think what has surprised me the most about it, I suppose that it's worked. I know that's a funny answer, maybe, but like,
Yeah, please elaborate.
I don't know. There's a confidence thing. There's an imposter syndrome you have to let
Yeah,
go of.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
know that's
sure.
a buzz term. It is.
Mm,
It's become one anyway, but it's not, it's true, right? Especially in the early years. It's like, what are we thinking? Like,
I know.
who are we to compete with
I
the
know.
giant ants of the world, or, the other agencies, the Bucks and all the things you were mentioning earlier. It's like, and so to learn to just like let go of that and be like, we're Dash and we
Yeah.
we belong here as much as anyone else does. And to be embraced, honestly, it's been really cool
Yeah.
to have the same community that embraced us when we were scrappy, still be with us and kind of be have our back is really great and surprising. I don't think a lot of other industries have the kind of community that ours has, and
Yeah.
that's really surprising. I didn't know that when we were like working at the agency. It was sort of before we
Yeah.
realized that there was a community. It was just a job. It was animating. It wasn't like,
The first time I
you
remember
know,
is when you and I went to that conference, F5 up in New York was like the first real exposure to like what this community is like,
yeah,
and just remembering how easy it was to talk to people, how supportive folks were. Like that was a hook for me is like, I want to go to more of those events. And you
yeah,
start to recognize how much other folks have to offer and wisdom and advice on all that stuff. I mean, so much of the early days of our studio, I felt like were defined by the conversations we were having at these events with other creatives and other creative leaders who had done what we had done earlier.
yeah. And even seeing that transition from, when we started hiring our friends and former colleagues, and that shifting to being able to put out an application and get at first tens of, and then dozens of, and then, you know, hundreds of applications to work for us in our studio. Like, that's
Yeah.
cool. That's really makes you feel good, right? That you're doing something right. Right.
Yeah. No, that's a really good take. If I were to answer that question, I agree with that. I don't think I realized how amazing this community would be. And it was like you and I were both so thirsty for that. So to find it had been awesome. I was going to say how much I've actually enjoyed entrepreneurship, given that I had never thought about it once before. You touched on this earlier that neither one of us had a plan to be business owners, and it kind of just happened. What I didn't expect was as I transitioned away from designer, animator, and more into the role of entrepreneur and business leader, how much I would enjoy that. Because I think what I love about design is problem solving at its core, right? You're working with a client, they have some ambiguous desire or need, and you're trying to figure out what you can do that's going to solve that problem and drive some action. I always love that. I love that back and forth. And so when it comes to business, yeah, there's not a defined answer. There's no like, hey, this is the playbook you follow for success. You try things and it doesn't work. You try things and it does. But I always love the creativity on figuring out what that could be. It led to us doing things like the bash, it's led to some random marketing endeavors and stuff that we've done. But I just love that it's kind of open-ended and open to trying different things, which I feel like is actually a really great space for designers, which is why I think designers could make great entrepreneurs. But yeah,
Yeah.
that definitely surprised me.
Yeah. That's a good one.
What do you think's been our biggest challenge over the years? Is there anything like, and that could change, of course, from the early days to now, but
Yeah.
as you think about just the challenges, is there one that sticks out to you over others?
I think that the first 5 years, I'd say, were like to the moon, like we're growing, we're getting more clients, we're
Mhm.
hiring, we're feeling really hot shit, you know?
Sure.
And so for me, the biggest challenge was when that hard lesson was learned where like not every year is going to be a good year.
Mm,
And it's easy to hire and it's easy to have fun and do crazy ideas and just create internal work and not worry about budgets when things are on the up. But when you have a down year and your revenue's not great or
mm,
your cash flow is not great, and then the stark reality hits you that like, oh shoot, we're like too big for our britches. We got to like scale this back. Uh,
mm,
that's been the biggest challenge for me. Uh, just dealing with how to navigate a bad year financially,
mm.
frankly.
I remember when we started the company, I talked to this person who was like a CPA to kind of just get advice on like running bookkeeping and stuff like that. Cause we did that in the early days. We just did our own books. Uh, didn't know much about numbers, and then we did.
To be fair,
No.
you did it, so thanks. Sorry about that.
But what I was going to say is this individual said, the most important piece of advice I can give you is cash flow. and that you've got to have good cash flow because even successful businesses, if they have poor cash flow, can go under. And I think you and I got a little bit lucky in being right time, right place when we started. I mean, because the explainer video was exploding when we started in 2015, right? And so by starting at that point in a market that hadn't been totally defined yet in a design space, really opened the door for opportunities for us to come in, especially in this tech hub that we're in
Yeah.
Raleigh, that we got really lucky, I think, in just being there and available and making really good work. I don't want to take anything away from the work because it was really good work, but we also were like one of the few folks in town that could really do that. So to your point, we got really lucky with that and cash flow was good and we didn't think
Well,
about it.
and
But
then you hit 2020 and the pandemic, which
yeah,
disrupted a lot of industries, but in a weird way was a pretty good year for us because a lot of like live action shoots were getting canceled because of,
sure.
you know, social distancing. And so a lot of clients who were just going to do a video were pivoting to an animation.
That's
And I
right.
have, even at the time, I remember feeling really guilty about that because it's like, well, dang, I mean, my friends in live action productions are really struggling, but we're
I
getting
know.
a lot of new clients. And so that was like, again, a good year financially, right?
Well, and I think it just highlights that there's just the unpredictability of business. You just don't know what's around the corner. Whether it's a boom of the explainer video, it is a boom of the pandemic for animation and a bust for others, or how dependent we end up becoming on some of our clients and how well they're doing. I know when tech went through a bunch of layoffs, had a lot of tech clients and that impacted us, right?
Right.
That's macroeconomics, which I truthfully probably wasn't thinking a ton about. But when you're a business owner, you're starting to look at all these pieces of the puzzle and how they come together.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I take away in 10 years of it is there's just a fragility to it all, right? I think it feels when the times are good, it feels like those are indefinite. And the reality is that a lot of business is more of like a sine wave, like a, kind of ups and downs, and you just be able to navigate it. I think in one of the talks I was talking about at South by Southwest, you know, Simon Sinek, I'm sure you've seen his little clips that he pops up on social, but he has the infinite game theory, and it's you have a finite game, American football game, where there's a start and there's end. You do everything you can to win the game, and at the end of the game, there's a winner and there's a loser. But when it comes to business, there's not really winners and losers. You're just trying to stay in the game. How long can you stay in the game?
Yeah.
So, you have companies that can do amazing, they're crushing it, but then the market changes or AI starts to come out and there's new asks and new deliverables, and some folks fall out of the game. And so I think one thing that I have learned now, 10 years in, is the importance of being versatile. So I think being able to do a lot of different things. And then you also got to be driven and determined. I mean, truthfully, you just have to plow through some of these moments, which are so tough. And I just think in the early days, maybe we didn't recognize that as much, but I think now 10 years in, we can understand just how much everything is changing on a year to year basis and that it's really got to keep you on your toes.
Yeah. And I think it's important to be as forthright and transparent and at least open with, our staff or the people who you work with about
Yeah.
the struggles as well as the successes, because you don't want to put on this. There were a lot of instances at the previous job where, like we weren't always privy to what was going on. And, it's not like everyone needs to know every little detail about every little thing, but you want to communicate and have respect for the people around you enough to talk about hey, things are tough. So these are some changes that we're going to have to make, or, hey, things are good. So we're going to try to reward you a little bit or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I also think, and it's worth noting that even with the best intentions, that can slip. I know you and I had when the times are going well, it's easy to share that information. But I think you and I had learned from missteps at Dash on concealing certain things,
Yeah.
well, maybe everyone doesn't need to know about this or this financial place. But the reality is, looking back on all of it, the more transparent you are on various things, the better it ultimately
Right.
is.
There's this desire to be like, oh, well, I'll fix it. So I don't have to say anything because we're going to fix
Yeah.
it. And then there's this
Right.
world where it's like, oh, well, we didn't fix it. So now they're going to find out the hard way. So yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree. That was more like a lesson learned perhaps than something that we knew from the start.
I
Definitely.
also think, just in that same vein, that there's this theory to your fix it theory that you'll come up with the right plan and you announce the plan and this is the plan and it's going to work and that's great. But the reality is, no matter how perfect you think anything is that you've crafted and come up with, that there's holes in it and there's room for flexibility, and you need to be open to that change.
Yeah,
Like, it's way better to audition stuff, put it out there, get feedback on it, and move forward together as a team, which builds better culture than top down management making decisions that it feels like folks are out of the loop on.
yeah,
And like, what's funny is like, we did leave an agency that we felt like we were experiencing some of that. And then, 5, 6 years in, we started to run to some of that ourselves and, had to look ourselves in the mirror on some of the stuff that we were doing to correct it.
totally, totally.
But I also think, all these, all these antidotes, not antidotes, all these tidbits are coming out as I'm thinking through this stuff. I think there was, and designers have a goal of kind of being perfect when really, perfection inhibits progress. Just moving things forward is also equally important. Sometimes I feel like we got hung up on overthinking certain things versus just trying something, moving it forward, getting feedback on it, and keeping it going, right?
Yeah, or even just being wishy-washy,
I know.
fence sitting, one thing I think that I've gotten better at that you are really good at, is like make a decision. It might
Oh,
end up
yeah.
it might end up being the wrong decision,
Yeah.
but like making the wrong decision is better than just like not making any decision at all and letting things flounder. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
100%.
that's a difficult lesson to learn, I think, as a manager.
Yes. Yes. And that, like, while you want to take in multiple viewpoints and that you want to respect everyone's opinion, it's really hard to get consensus. You know, it's just
Hmm.
hard to get consensus all the time. And at a certain point, a decision needs to be made. And, you got to be comfortable in making that decision.
Hmm.
Um, Man, what's the name of the book? I think it's, Kim Scott, Radical Candor,
Hmm.
talks about this like quadrant where it's like, you need to be empathetic, but you can't be too empathetic. You need to be decisive, but you can't be an asshole boss. It's like, you got to find the middle ground of like understanding, but also being driven and comfortable making some of those decisions.
Yeah, and it's still something that I work on. I mean, it's not like I'm great
Oh,
at it all the time,
sure.
but it's
All right, here's a good question. What does a business owner worry about? What are you worried about, Corey?
well,
Or
I
do
don't
you
know.
not worry anymore?
Yeah, right. I mean, I will say that I'm pretty good at staying cool even when things are under pressure, be it a client or finances or whatever. Like I try not to let it to freak out. But I do think that like, you know, these days I want to make sure that the people that are working for us are happy, that they're paid well, that they want to work here, that like they are feeling good about their position at Dash, right? Like that's a bigger worry to me than in the early days. I'm sure it was just like find the next client, make the next cool thing, you know what I mean? And there's still obviously the next client is probably what you're worried about. But like I do feel like, yeah, I want 10 years to turn into 15 to turn into 20, right? So
Yeah.
what can we do now to set that up, you know?
I think it's also changed for me over the years and what I've worried about. I think in the early days it was like, credibility at Dash. You hear these
Mhm.
new kids on the block. They're trying to make some cool stuff. Does the industry know it exists? Do they like us? Are we making cool stuff? Like, almost wanting that validation and worrying about that, feels kind of superficial a little bit,
It's
but
that ego thing I was talking about earlier a
um,
little bit, I
but
think.
it's like I wanted that. I was like, here is such a cool industry that makes cool stuff, and like everyone's so nice and friendly, and it's badass people are at this table. Like, I want to be cool too. Like, I worried about that, right? And then I think we got into like hiring folks, and then especially maybe the first like hard year we had as a company, I would say like then I started to worry about like, cash flow, because then you start to like pay attention to it. And there's cash flow, but then there's also like burn rate. So like if you're not bringing in work, how long are you going to like be willing to burn money before making changes, and what's appropriate there? So it definitely turned into like a more of a monetary thing. I think worrying now is more like there's just so much change and upheaval in our industry at the moment. And
Mhm.
so there's a worry about what all this new tech can do to an industry that just feels like we were starting to like understand it a little bit. And so I think a worry is just making sure that, again, now that Dash is kind of worked our way up over these last 10 years, making sure that's sustainable and that we're in it. And like, how do we innovate? How do we come up with the next new thing? How do we build on what we've done already? And how do we prep ourselves for the future? I mean, that's
Hmm.
more worry too, It's like once you get here, it's like, I don't want to become irrelevant, So it's like, how do we maintain that? But I will say, I think you're really good about your emotions and staying calm. I've always appreciated that about you. Like even in like even in some of these like ridiculous situations we found ourselves in over the last 10 years, you're always pretty calm head. And I'm always the one like, I can't believe it, and you're like, it's fine.
It's fine. We're gonna be all right.
It'll be all right. But I will say, like, I personally feel like having gone through 10 years of decisions in both good ones and bad ones, that I feel more comfortable making a decision regardless of the outcome. It took a lot of self reflection and some good Brene Brown tips, but I love what she talks about and like showing up in the arena. You know, you are doing the best you can. You're making decisions. You're moving things forward, and people are always going to cast doubt from the sidelines or say various things or question a decision. And hindsight's always 2020.
Yeah.
But I feel better about what you mentioned earlier, making a decision. I feel better about whatever decision I make, knowing that I'm, trusting my gut and what feels right and moving forward with that stuff, and definitely feeling better about that. I think now than some of the overthinking that I think you and I both did in the early days. We would just overthink so much stuff.
Yeah. You don't have that sign behind you, do you?
Oh no, I don't. It's
Yeah.
not hanging up
Dang.
here. Don't overthink this. That'll be a
Yeah.
great opportunity for that. That's so funny. As you think towards like our, general success we've had over the last 10 years, what do you really credit towards it? Is it right place, right time with some of the work? Is it the people? Is it community? I don't know. Is there anything that you
Yeah.
like kind of think back towards?
That's a good question. I mean,
That's all I got,
yeah.
Cory. Good
I
questions.
I think a lot of our success comes from the connections that we've made with people, you
Mm,
know? I think and that's I think that's true of a lot of businesses, honestly, is like the clients you meet or the former coworkers who move off and go somewhere else and they call you back, or going to these conferences and meeting someone. I mean, people have asked me before, like, does the Dash Bash actually result in any like revenue for y'all or any like
mm,
new business for y'all? Or is it just like name recognition and community building, right? And interestingly enough, it does, but it's never as like direct, A to B as it is like with like a sales call. It's more like, for example, as you well know, but it's an interesting story. Like at one of the bashes, a freelancer came, had a great time. They had a big client who they were already working for who asked them to do more work, more
mm,
than they could handle. They said, "Hey, you should call this cool studio Dash. I just went to their conference. They're really great. They could handle the volume you're talking about, whereas me as an individual can't." And
mm.
that turned into like literally our biggest client from a
Yeah.
revenue perspective ever.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
so, and that wouldn't have happened without the Dash Bash. It would have happened without the connections, again, to these people that we're making.
Yeah, but I think like to add on to that though, like the the intentionality behind it wasn't to create the sale. The intentionality was it to support that community that we have found so much support in. And if like
100%.
right, and so if you're just authentic to that and just being like who you are, right? And there was an ulterior motive. It was a nice benefactor of putting on that event, but it wasn't
Exactly.
expected. And because it wasn't expected, it was truly just trying to put on a good event for our industry, then you get recommendations like that.
Yeah.
I feel like relationships are more important than I ever realized to all this stuff. Like if I could go back to college, Mac, who was not applying to internships, not going to conferences, not meeting people and remembering to follow up on stuff, like that'd be the biggest piece of advice, I think, because, you know, we were good at our craft, and for better or for worse, the agency we worked at, they had a high turnover, and so folks would come there, work there for a little bit, and go on to other jobs. While you and I ended up working there for whatever 5 years. So when we left, our immediate initial business was some of the moonlighting projects we did, but mainly it was a lot of the ex agency folks we had worked with that had brought us in and hired us, right? Which was awesome. That's relationships and like going above and beyond to support someone. I mean, I know you and I were always hanging out late at the agency, wrapping stuff up. And so those project managers and creative directors and ACDs all knew we would go to bat for them. And then I think with those first few clients we started to get, so much of it's like a snowball effect. It's like
Mhm.
regardless of the project, we were always trying to make it the best it could be, and just putting our all into it. I never really felt like we half-assed anything. I think whatever project we had, we always were trying to make it the best it could be. And I think that matters because people have a good experience in working with you. And then, of course, they recommend you. And then you do that over 10 years. And that's so much of how like our workload has come in is because of all those referrals. I think I did that talk at Off Fest and looked at the statistic. And I think it was like 84% of our work has come from somebody that we knew or referred us, right?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
think do you think all right, here's a good question. I'm gonna steal this from How I Built This, Guy Raz, because I think he asked this on a lot of the ends of his episodes where he interviews business owners. But he always asks, is it luck or is it skill? Like, do you think the success we've had over the years is more attributed to luck or you think it's more attributed to skill?
Is it a cop out to say both?
No, man, this is our podcast. We can say whatever we want to.
uh yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that it's not giving ourselves enough credit just to say it was luck. I mean, it's like you can't luck your way into creating an animation or knowing how to use After Effects.
Yeah.
Like that is a skill, right? But I also think, you could be the best and the best at something, but unless you have a good opportunity,
Uh,
it's not going to gel or turn into something. So that's why I know it sounds like a terrible answer, but that's why I feel like it has to be both.
yeah.
I
I
don't
do
know.
too.
I really hate that answer, but I just feel like that's just the truth. I mean, there's the luck of the people we met at our old agency, the luck of the people we met at these conferences because we didn't. But then there's like making the project the best it can be, getting it done quicker than they thought it could be done. The skill element of it, right? It's still present because it is a very skill based career that we're in.
Yeah. I mean, if I think about our 3 biggest clients that we've ever brought in, one of them was the direct result of working with folks who now are decision makers and work there when we were at our previous agency. So they got to see how we worked, right? So they knew us personally, they knew how we worked, and there's
But is
that kind
that
of
luck
trust.
or skill, right? That we're lucky that we know them, but they saw our skill level, you
We're
know?
lucky that we both worked there at the same time,
Yeah.
and then they saw it. I think about second biggest client came in through a referral through uh, another agency or another studio where we know a lot of those folks, and we met those folks by going to conferences.
Mhm.
So it was lucky we went to the conferences and we got to meet them, and we had a good time, and that they think highly of us. That hey, we can't take on this project. Let's recommend it to Dash. So it's like luck that we had met them, but they're also not going to recommend that project if they didn't feel like we could execute on it
Yeah, if
or
they
that we
went
knew
to
what
our
we're doing.
website and they thought everything was garbage, they wouldn't have sent that email, you know what I mean? So,
I
yeah.
mean, we put on that conference and we got that referral. Is it luck that that happened? That person just happened to be there and send it our way? I
Yeah.
don't know. So I get what you're saying. Like I think it is a mixture of both. I do think you can put yourself in the right position to find some of that luck. I mean, what I
Well,
recognize.
that's true. I mean, it's you can't just be like it's not like I slipped on a banana peel and fell into a client's lap, you know what I mean? It's like yeah.
Great. That's the analogy. There
Yeah.
you
I'm
go.
just but, we are going to those we're getting on the plane in Raleigh, we're flying to Vancouver, we're going to Blend, we're going to New York and pitching, right? We're doing the
Yeah.
things, and then maybe there's a luck element that lands the deal, but if we were just sitting at home not doing any of that stuff, then there's not even an opportunity for luck, you know?
I think what's crazy though is you can be really good at your craft. And you can do all this good stuff and you can get lucky in some regards on like the projects coming through. But like when I think about some of the things that like just categorically changed Dash was some of these big campaigns that we had won. And, when I say big campaigns, I'm talking about like big campaigns, like top tier stuff people were paying for motion design. And we probably have like 3 or 4 of those that really shaped Dash that I feel like was a catalyst for us hiring more people, getting more notoriety, having some of these brands to work with. And, you know, like, again, it just like one of those came in through a phone call randomly. It's just random. But going back again, You go to these conferences, you put yourself out there, you're talking to a lot of people. I think that's the best piece of advice, honestly, we could give to anyone is just like the importance of being a good human, being authentic to whoever you are. You don't have to have a certain style, but be authentic to whatever that style is, and then put yourself out there. I think so often, you know, we have imposter syndrome, to go back to what you said earlier, that I don't know if I should be here. I don't know if I'm part of this. Should I put myself out there? And I think like we can 100% credit taking the chance and taking the courage to go put ourselves out there and go have these conversations, just talk to people and see what happens. And then you just never know. Sometimes the stuff builds up over years. I mean, you might meet somebody and nothing comes of it for years later, but it's just, nurturing that and and still catching up from time to time and just being friends. And then when you're friends, people want to work with other friends.
Yeah. The funny thing about that project from the phone call that you should mention is that this was back when we had the telephone landline.
Oh, we had the ringback tones.
Yeah, exactly. We had people would actually call you on the phone, and so we had
Tell me about it, Grandpa Cory.
I know. We had a speakerphone, and
Cory, what was it like in 1900 when you were born?
a lot less animation, although still some. Um, and we thought it was hilarious. We changed our hold music to the Rickroll song.
Yeah,
Never
Rick
Gonna Give You
Astley.
Up. Yeah,
1987 classic.
and so this big shot client called, and it goes to hold, and as because they called in first, and so as soon as we joined the meeting, they were just laughing, and we were like, "Oh yeah, hey, nice to meet you." And they were like, "Did you just Rickroll me?"
That's
Like,
right.
on our first client call.
I know.
And
You love the vibes. That's amazing.
And yeah, I think I credit Rick Astley for a lot of things, but for that first big contract,
In addition to his 1987 classic, it's
Thank you,
thank you, Rick, for that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right. This has all been really good stuff, and I'm glad we took some time to chat through it. Maybe let's see, we got a few more minutes left. Let me ask you a couple of questions here we can like wrap it up on. Okay. What advice would you give to your younger self? So let's think back to Cory, who's maybe on the precipice of change. Whether, in this case, we ended up starting this company, but I also know at that time you were also thinking about whether it's a big move or something different. You're at this point of needing change in your life. You're a young gun. I don't know. What would be the advice that you would give?
I feel like this is a little repetitive, but I think it would be to just get off the fence, make the decision, pull the trigger, do it. Don't worry about it so much. Yeah, I don't know. What about you?
Honestly, I feel like I would echo that same sentiment. I feel like when you're younger, for sure, we'll call it your 20s or even early 30s, there's this fear of like misstepping and that like you're that you're too late in life to like get back on the right track or that like something's catastrophic is going to happen. I just feel like you have one life to live and that you should take the chance, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think not worrying so much about it and just kind of seeing what happens because there's still a lot of time left. And
Especially when you're younger.
yeah, yeah. But I feel like if you're not younger and someone's older, maybe listening to this, is the advice that maybe I would give would just be going back to this idea of perfection. It just inhibits progress. I just think so many people want something to be perfect before they make a step. Either I want to have my clients perfectly aligned so that when I leave my full-time job to go freelance, I'm good to go. I have this plan, or if I get to this place, once I have these things in my life, then I'll be comfortable taking the next step or whatever that is. And I think, what we have learned is the importance of just trying stuff, auditioning stuff, and just keeping it moving forward. I mean, that is just such a critical piece, is just having momentum. And so I would say, regardless of age, if we're talking to someone who's older, anyone out there listening, just to keep it moving forward, I think would probably be my best piece of advice.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. What do you think's the next 10 years of Dash starting to look like, or the next 10 years of motion design work is starting to look like?
That's the question of the hour, I think.
I think a lot of people are trying to figure out that question right
Me
now.
too. Me too. I think. Well, I think that you brought it up earlier, but there's so much emerging technology, but there's also a very um, palpable resistance to it within, I think, any kind of design related industry, whether it's ours or anything else that's creative, which is totally logical. I mean, there's this threat of job loss or job change or whatever it is because of technology and clients wanting things faster, cheaper, more of them. Uh, and so I think there's just got to be an effort to try to live with it because it's not going anywhere. And so
Mhm.
for me, it's like, how do we balance that idea of, okay, I want to embrace these new tools because they're not going anywhere, but I care about the human touch and the craft element of animation and sort of like the people behind the scenes. And so where's the marrying of those two things? And I think that it's possible. I think that,
Mhm.
you know, it just means that the job will change, not go away.
Yeah.
Um, right. And that's
Mhm.
just, I don't know how it's going to change. I can't answer that question. I'm not a fortune teller, right? But it's like being open to it is, I think, what needs to happen in the next 10 years, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say some of the hot takes that I think about through the lens of the future. I think one, community is going to be more important than ever. And I say that because think about how often you're inundated with spam of someone trying to sell you something, get you to buy something, how invasive these like text message ads are and stuff. People are so sick of that stuff. So when it comes to a buyer's journey and what they're doing, they're going to be leaning on their friends for recommendations and what that
Hmm.
is. And so community is where that's going to come. So I think if you're a business out there, I think you have to be building strong communities. And if you're an individual freelancer or sorts, I think finding yourself a community to be a part of is really important. So I think communities is going to be on the rise. I also think that my initial fears of AI when some of that stuff started to come out, Sora or whatever, was very real. But having gone on for, I guess, about a year or so now since a lot of those big updates, genuinely feel like that AI is going to continue to be a tool and that people are going to crave more of the craftsmanship than the AI junk that's being put out, which really behooves and elevates true creators who have a good true craft. I think the motion designers that are doing well right now are not ones that can necessarily just animate, but they can design, be a problem solver. So
Hmm.
that is a craft. And so for the true craftsmen and women out there, I think that's going to be on a rise. So I think it's people and I think it's craft as we move into the future. And then, of course, I think there is going to be some symbiosis of tech usage in there. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll do another
Yeah.
one of these in our 20 year. We're a little bit more gray in the beard. I got a little bit coming in right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know we got to wrap it up, but I do feel like you're right. And I do feel like, you know, if a lot of these big companies that expect AI to come in and do the job for them are learning that it doesn't, and they still need people who know how to use those tools to make what they actually end up wanting, right? And so how do you, again, use your real craftsmanship to make the real stuff that people are really looking for and use these AI tools to make the stuff that maybe isn't as creative quicker, more efficiently, because someone still needs to do it. It still needs to know how to do it, right? It's a tricky landscape to navigate.
Yeah, 100%. Ever evolving landscape. Well, brother, have enjoyed it 10 years. Thanks so much for being my partner in crime. And I love you. And I can't wait to see what the next 10 look like.
Yep. Likewise, buddy.
All right. Thanks, dude. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you in another 10 years.